Justin, great to have you in quick time. Your initial reaction to this breaking development?
Huge big news. Mate, I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you what should have happened, but I can tell you that the Emergency Powers Act doesn't use the word tariff. The Constitution gives the right to tariffs and all taxes to Congress. This decision doesn't say you can't issue tariffs. It says the president has to go through Congress to do it. So it's all about the unilateral power of our king over here. I think what you're going to see very quickly is a very positive reaction from global markets. That's markets telling you that the president's signature policy that he fought so hard for to help American businesses, markets believe it hurts American businesses.
That's really interesting because we were showing the markets board and they were still up. So you would expect a positive response from the markets, not a negative one. I'll touch on that in a moment in more detail. But in terms of the fallout, because Donald Trump, I mentioned it, I don't know if you heard me saying it, there was that long post a few weeks ago where he ended saying the problems it would cause the US if this decision went against him, and I've cleaned up the language he used, but he was talking about it costing trillions of dollars to the US. Potentially, could it? Justin, I don't know if
I lost you, Matthew?
I think you have lost me temporarily. I was just making the point that in one of the posts recently, Donald Trump said if this ruling went against him, it would cost the US trillions of dollars. Do you think that is realistically what we potentially could be looking at?
No, mate, this is silly. So first of all, what you've got there is a bloke who doesn't know the difference between billions and trillions. He hasn't raised trillions. And secondly, this is just a bloke who doesn't like permission. If he wants tariffs, it's really easy. You ask Congress to pass a law. Turns out it's a Republican-controlled Congress. If it's such a good idea, all he's got to do is have the argument with his own party and win it. If he can't do that, you've got to think it's a pretty bad argument.
A final quick question to you before I bring in Gary O'Donoghue, our correspondent. What happens to all those firms, countries that have been paying the tariffs if there's not a way of actually getting this through Congress to get to the same point we're at now? Are they entitled to try and ask for that money back?
Right. So first of all, countries don't pay tariffs. I want to be really clear on that. Who has paid tariffs is the American companies who brought it in. Now, the decision is about that thick, and I went straight from it being released to talking to you, so I haven't had a chance to dig into that. But that's one of the big questions is, will people be eligible to get refunds for what happened so far? But I want to hit you just with one big point. What if we had a trade war potentially caused much of the world's economy, including the United States, to go down the toilet, and all along the whole darn thing turned out to be unconstitutional and illegal? Wow, what a day and what a world we're in.
Justin, hopefully I'll come back to you in a moment or two, but over the months we have talked many times about this, and many times you've talked about the uncertainty that we were just talking about there, but the impact on a whole variety of American businesses, and I suppose also one has to constantly remember the consumer, because a lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of this has been passed on to the consumer, hasn't it?
Absolutely. So the current studies seem to suggest somewhere between about 90 or 95% of the cost of these tariffs has been borne by the United States. Now, it actually turns out that because there was so much uncertainty, a lot of companies didn't pass them on to consumers yet. They thought that this might happen. And so what we actually saw was a compression of profit margins. So, look, there's two ways that tariffs can hit you. One is you go to the store and there's a higher price, and we've seen some of that, but not a lot. The other is that it reduces the profitability of American companies. And I happen to hold those in my retirement account, as do most other Americans. And so if I'm not paying at the store, I'm paying in my retirement account instead. So what we are seeing right now is markets are responding positively. So those retirement accounts are going to look a little healthier at the end of the day.
Through this last year, as we've had these tariffs post-Liberation Day, I mean, what have economists made of it? Because at different stages, it just kept changing. They were imposed or announced, then pulled back. We saw with China, it ratcheted up to way above 100%, then it's gone back down. Economically, did it make any sort of sense to you, what you were hearing coming out of the White House?
No. Oh, Matthew, can I just give you a big hug and thank you for asking that, mate. This has been absurd. Look, there's really two fundamental issues here. The first is, are tariffs a good idea? Look, I think they're a bad idea. Most economists think they're a bad idea. Most of us think in practice they turn out to be a worse idea than they are in theory. But there's room for reasonable people to disagree. There's a different question, which is, what about tariffs the way the Trump administration has imposed them? On Monday, off on Tuesday. Heck, we'll go ahead despite the fact the Supreme Court might be about to rule it illegal. Changing tariffs because he didn't like the tone of voice. Was it the Swiss Prime Minister? The problem is, if you want tariffs to have any positive effect, you have to credibly commit that this is a serious long-term change in policy. If you do that, you have to go through Congress and actually pass laws and do the hard work of legislating. The president did none of that. And as a result, the United States and the world is definitely going to get all the costs of tariffs, but the United States isn't going to get any of the benefits of it either. This has been a pointless and pointlessly destructive episode from start to finish. Bad economics, bad management, bad politics.
Let's pick up on the politics because you are there in America, so you will know it very well. You spoke in your earlier answers about, well, this avenue has now been ruled illegal. There may be a way going through Congress of getting to the same place via a different avenue. But is there the political support? Because there have certainly been a few Republicans that have broken ranks and said this makes no sense. So could he get this sort of thing passed through the current sort of Congress that exists?
I understand. Wonderful question. So let me start with where the real power lies. The real power, and this is ultimately lies with the people. And President Trump has fundamentally failed to bring the American people along. Tariffs, which normally sound popular, heck, we'll charge other countries, it'll be great. It's easy to get tariffs to poll really well. Trump has fundamentally failed, and he's actually managed to turn the American people against tariffs. That then weighs on the next important thing, which is, yes, the Supreme Court hasn't said there's any tariffs that are off the table. It's just said you got to go through Congress. Well, one, the economics of tariffs are a bad idea, and two, the American people understand that. And so what that means is the president could, if he were not, and I think genuinely lazy, put together a tariff law and see if he could get it through Congress. And the answer is he can't. He can't because it's a bad idea, he can't because it's destructive, and he can't because the American people understand both of those things. Now, that still doesn't end everything. Let me go one step back. The Constitution gives the power to tax to Congress. So you might think the president can do nothing, but over the years, Congress has understood that Congress is not very good at passing laws. So Congress has given a few limited powers directly to the presidency. And those are powers the president still holds. Roughly speaking, the president, what the Supreme Court said today is whenever you impose a tariff on a whole country or the whole world, you can't do that. That's not okay. But you can impose tariffs under specific conditions, things like national security and so on very specific industries using a specific process. That process is long and boring and not the sort of thing the president's very good at. There is also an emergency power where he could impose tariffs of either 10 or 15% for up to 6 months. And my guess is they might do that as early as this afternoon. But there's no easy way for the president to move forward with the rest of his trade war without bringing along Congress, and he can't do that without bringing along the American people.
Justin, thanks very much.